Hi, I am Pratim Ranjan Bose and you are watching Podcast with Pratim, presented by Iravati Research and Communication Center or IRCC. In this episode, we will discuss the recent visit of Bangladeshi Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina to India, the key takeaways from the meeting, both in India-Bangladesh context and from the perspective of India-China contest over the region. I have two distinguished guests. Both have been frequent visitors to my show, and both have authored books on Bangladesh. The book details are available in the details of this video. Pinak Ranjan Chakravarty is India's former Secretary, Economic Relations in the Ministry of External Affairs. He was also the Indian ambassador to Bangladesh in 2007 and 9. Sreeradha Datta is a professor of Jindal School of International Affairs of O.P. Jindal Global University and a well-known expert on Southeast Asian issues. She has also been a personal friend and kindly invited me in to contribute in some of our research articles and books. So welcome to you both Ambassador Chakravarty and Professor Datta.
Thank you. Happy to be here as always.
Let me start this conversation with Ambassador. Sir, the mutual exchange of railway transit, a rail-connected ICD at Sirajganj, definite moves to ensure power trade between BBIN nations, UPI, commitment to CEPA and renewal of Ganga Water Treaty, availability, ensuring easy availability of medical visas, more visa centers, India's offer for capacity building with regard to judges, bureaucrats, and police in Bangladesh. I mean, basically training. And Teesta water project, which has been a very important thing. Also, there are two areas I found them very interesting. Space and civil nuclear program, where India has been very strong technology in terms of technology. So this is generally the gamut. There are many long-term issues, partnerships, visions, etc. are shared, but I'm just taking it in a nutshell. How did the bilateral go to your view, and what are your topics?
Well, in a broad sense, I think the bilaterals were kind of, anchored in continuity in terms of what we have been doing in the past. And you talked about a lot of connectivity issues. Broadly, I think it's under the rubric of what I would call the transport connectivity. Plus, there is energy security issues, which is like providing power, etc. BBIN, involving both Nepal and Bhutan. Then there are, of course, other issues like people-to-people, e-visa for medical particularly, which is a very important concern for many Bangladeshis. And then we have other newer areas, you could call it like space and nuclear and things like that. We have been helping them in training, in nuclear training, particularly to how to run a power plant. Then there is, of course, the railway, the new railway lines that are going to be laid, which will connect the BBIN countries and allow transportation of goods and hopefully passengers across the whole region, crossing borders on both sides. So these are some of the broad areas in which India and Bangladesh have been cooperating. And this visit pushes the envelope further in terms of creating better, connectivity. There's also trade facilitation issues like, creating, better infrastructure at the border, Benapole, Petropole, and on the others, on the ICP, on the Agartala side. These are some of the broad issues that this visit concentrated, they concentrated on some of these issues.
Okay. Sreeradha, railway transit, power trade, both have very strong BBIN content, as you can see. They will essentially allow Bangladesh to trade with Nepal and Bhutan, and while India will gain access, alternate access to Northeast. And Bangladesh will also gain some north-south, new north-south connectivity through that Bogura-Sirajganj rail link. So are we seeing a revival of BBI and dialogue through this?
Yes, I certainly agree to that. I mean, if you recall the initial joint communique that we had signed in 2010, uh, India-Bangladesh relationship was a lot more than just bilateral. It was all about a regional landscape. And I think what we are now witnessing is exactly the step towards that. There are technical issues on the energy, which I'm hoping will, of course, be sorted. But the fact that in principle, all the partners have agreed, we are also hoping, at some point Bhutan will join the grid too, and once it's up and about, then everybody can. And of course, the railway lines, as you said. The larger issue here is, as you know, that we had signed the motor vehicle agreement in 2015. And the fact that you're not able to take that forward is something that we need to address. The point always has been that, initially Bhutan said they were, and they did sign it, and then they stepped out on citing environmental issues. But again, we are all aware of the fact environment is an aspect that's not something that we will not be able to overcome. Certainly we can work on that. But the actual problem was that they were all the partners, which is why even now Nepal has stepped out, is they feel that India has a wherewithal which they can't match, and rightly so. Our truckers are far more efficient, the vehicles are modern. So naturally, they felt that their own treaties, which is exactly what started with Bhutan, and then now we've had conversation with Nepal who say the same thing. Only they don't say it openly at official forum, which is why nobody gets down to addressing it. You, me, we are constantly in touch. So coming back to that,
But
I think why.
I have a point here to make. If you look globally, leave alone the developed world, globally, making these kind of transport agreements is very, very difficult. And the only one we have closer to us is Greater Mekong. And it's not really operating very well. On the IMT, we heard that Thai truckers will not allow Indian trucks and etc. So, over to you. Yeah.
Yes, there is that problem, but I'm saying the kind of partnership with Bangladesh agreeing to transit, the fact that we can use Mongla Chittagong port. I mean, the landscape is changing, and it is also important that we start having frank conversations here with all the partners. I mean, 10 years ago, we didn't even think of cross-border pipelines and other things, which are all so effective now.
Agreed.
So why is it that we can't? I mean, as you're saying, it is difficult, but it's not something that, especially the BBI members, I think everybody wants to, because it's going to be a plus for everyone else. So there is no reason. But let me come back to here on this. There's also, again, while the motor vehicle agreement is again on the truckers problem, on the railway line also, the Rajshahi-Shahdpur railway link is something that Bangladesh is bound to resist, because again, we will have kind of a greater position there, far more impact in that sense of our own vehicles and everything. They have the problem, again, as we often have discussed this, that at the official, at the government level, a lot of things have been put in place, but at the local level, the resentment, the fear, the apprehensions of India's presence being larger at both at the road or the railways has never been factored in. Which is why we've not been able to take it forward. So, I mean, I would really like, because you work on this closely. So, how do we address that, and what do we talk? I mean, because clearly India has advantage, but it's not that we are not willing to work closely to see how they can also gain and benefit from this, the transport system.
Right. I will respond to this. Ambassador has certain things to say. So, will you go first, sir, or should I respond to her query?
No, may I just take up the point that Sreeradha just made, a very, very important and valid point, that how do you take it forward? Now, there is one model that I would like to refer to, which is, let's say, the Inland Water Trade and Transit Treaty, which is like taking of goods either way along the navigable rivers that we have, the river trade that takes place. Now, the original treaty, which is renewed often periodically, said that the goods that are being taken up and down has to be shared 50-50. Now, we have never insisted on that. And I think Bangladeshi barges and boats, etc., that take these goods, take more than 80% of the goods. And we have said, okay, this is something that you are better at in some ways. So we said, okay, you do this, but we will not object, although the treaty is very clear. Now, similar kind of arrangements can be made. I agree that there is an asymmetric advantage that India enjoys in almost every sector. Now, what do? Do you close your eyes and say, I will not cooperate, or you devise certain methods to cooperate? I believe that we can do it. There are models available. And I think some asymmetric advantages have to be given to the BBI and the BBN countries so that they come on board. Don't forget, there are obviously business lobbies, truckers lobbies at work here. It is their livelihood, and that is going to be affected. So we have to take care of that. We are not a rich country or developed countries. We are not in that category at all. Hence, livelihood is a very important issue.
I agree, sir. Actually, the very rightly pointed out that in case of inland water treaty, not only inland water treaty, if you even look at coastal movement, right, coastal ship movement, it is all Bangladeshi ships. There are not Indian ships. So there are anomalies on either side, if we look at it that way. But again, on the basically, you can understand smaller players, smaller economies will always have some sensitivity towards the bigger player that they will take over. And I'm leaving apart the political past of these nations. But in case of railways, Sreeradha, that is not going to happen. So I saw reports over there that it will clog their Rajshahi-Soyadpur line, which is Bangladesh railway network is rickety and there are a lot of, it's congested, trains don't run on time. So they have a valid point there that it will congest. There are two things to be pointed out here. One, this alternate route is merely alternate. It is not going to be the main route because simply you have two customs checkpoints, whether it is a transit or not. So that will lead to delay in movement. And no one for domestic transfer, they will not really prefer this. We have experienced this. It doesn't work that way. Second is, I mean, say, for example, for bringing goods from, which is already in place from Chattogram port to Tripura, it is not working that way. Our truckers or our businesses are not preferring to take it through Bangladesh. Second is, in this case, this Bogura Sirajganj link, which I think India provided finance in the third tranche, right? So there is delay. The last report I saw, I'm not very clear. I asked one consultant there. They said that the project should complete next year. But one report I saw that the land acquisition is expected to be complete now. Now, either way, if the land acquisition is over, the project will happen. So what that will do is it will open a shorter and an alternate route between north-south, and it will not take the Jamuna bridge, where there are some weight restrictions and speed restrictions. So this is not going to impact Bangladesh. Rather, it is going to open a new line. And second is the ICD, the depot that is coming up at Sirajganj. It is on the river and then will be connected by rail. So the viability of that ICD will improve. That is the other side of the story. Sir, let me ask you something here. Bangladesh is not doing well. And economically, there are lots of issues. It's almost 2 years that the inflation is above 9%. People are not talking about it, but I don't know why, but it's abysmally bad. The real growth rate must be very low. And they need finance. The Forex crisis continues. And in case the US economy enters into a slowdown end of this year as projected, then there will be serious trouble for them, or the trouble will only increase. So Bangladesh is looking for finance. And at the same time, China has been keen for this Teesta project next to India's Siliguri corridor, strategic corridor. In her post-visit press conference from Dhaka a day or two before, she almost said that she is okay if India does that project. And this is happening at a time when she will be visiting China in a 2 weeks' time to crack a $7 billion deal. That is what I read from Bangladeshi newspapers. Now, how do you look at these three developments, both economically and politically?
Well, on the economic side, I think the picture is improving because about $320 million have been added to the reserves, which are now hovering around $20 billion, which is, of course, a big fall from around $45 billion. The IMF is probably going to give another one tranche of around 1.6 billion.
$1.1 billion.
Something like that. And hence that picture is likely now improved. But yes, I mean, COVID and the war in Ukraine, affected every country, particularly fertilizers, food and energy costs went up. And that impacted not just on Bangladesh, but also almost all countries of the global south. And hence this huge demand that this war should be brought to an end as quickly as possible. The second point is about the Teesta. Now, Teesta is a bilateral issue. These two rivers flow through India and Bangladesh. Now, why did Bangladesh choose to bring in China, and why did China choose to offer loans, etc.? Now, China's role and ambition is quite clear in our neighborhood. They want to contain India's influence. Plus, they thought this was a good, geographically. This is in the sort of soft underbelly of the Siliguri corridor, and they have interests in the north of that, and beyond Sikkim and Bhutan, and and they thought that they would, if they could establish a presence here, it would be strategically good for them. And Bangladesh felt that if we bring in China, then we can make India more amenable to what we call in IR playing the China card, which is exactly what has happened. And India has had to, step in and offer, finance, etc., and saying that let us do this together rather than bring in China. So this is what has happened ultimately. China, of course, will be funding other projects. India has no problem in funding projects, in funds coming from China for projects. I mean, after all, China has built many bridges in Bangladesh and other infrastructure. We have never objected to that. That's not the point here. Point is about our security concerns and our security concerns that we have conveyed to Bangladesh. And Bangladesh, as a friendly nation, has understood that. There are other examples like the Matarbari port, etc., where China wanted to do it, but then it finally, it was again, China would have built another Hambantota. And finally, the point about debt trap, etc., I think Bangladesh understands that very well. And they are far more cautious than other countries who walked with their eyes closed into this debt trap.
Thank you. I'll come to this Japan-Korea thing, Matarbari, just to wrap up this discussion. Before that, the last question to Sreeradha. Doing anything for India-Bangladesh relations is a political negative in Bangladesh. And right at this moment, it is more a political negative. And on top of that, the grip of China has enhanced like anything. I heard is the right or wrong, I don't know, that they even are taking stakes in media. Okay. Bangladeshi media. So all put together, how do you see this, so there is a lot of discussion going on in Bangladesh that Hasina is tilting to India. How do you look at this allegation? And how do you think she is managing the domestic and the international politics?
The fact that, her first international visit was to India, the fact that she's, been able to quite officially state the fact that the Teesta project is something that she's examining with India. And while I don't think Bangladesh government ever talked about China being part of the Teesta project, but the media houses are full of that. And we've heard about the project detailing from the media itself, and the government hadn't spoken. But at the same time, she really has to walk a very fine line because a large part of her ministers, her MPs are extremely pro-constituency of China there. And that's something she cannot ignore. And I do believe that she thinks that India really is her steadfast friend and partner here. And of course, and the point that you mentioned about the economy, really, nosedive situation even today, she does expect that India would bail her out. I think there are no two ways about that. She would expect India to be more forthcoming on that, and I'm sure that would be the case. But at the same time, and in the last couple of years, if you notice, China's funds to Bangladesh hasn't been that many. The projects have been the Teesta, the Podda railway project is on, and several other project is on. But in terms of the BRI projects, the funds have been actually very, very marginal. But at the same time, and I think the Teesta was exactly at the point that Ambassador Chakravarty mentioned, that China has a tendency, and the entire play in South Asia is about marginalizing India's influence in South Asia. And Bangladesh, of course, is a strong player in that case. But at the same time, there are several other aspects, and that is, we can't even compare. And as Bangladesh has shown in the past and present, I think they will continue to keep India on one side and Bangladesh on the other, and China on the other. I mean, I think Sheikh Hasina government is extremely sensitive to India's security concerns. We've seen that from the day one. And that's not going to change as long as Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina is there. I mean, that's for sure. But at the same time, there's many other projects. We've seen that we've not been able to do a lot of other infrastructure projects where they've jumped in. But at the same time, a lot of ports and other issues they wanted, which Bangladesh didn't give. So I think Bangladesh has done an extremely good way of managing both her two very, very strong partners. And that's not going to change. I do feel that pro-China constituency is getting stronger in Bangladesh, and she will have to actually work around that. How much she's wants to work with India, there are limitations about that, and she will continue to have that pressure domestically on her about reaching out to China much more.
Ambassador, in 2 minutes, the point that Sreeradha is raising, and let me add on to that, what we understand of Bangladesh is internally or in terms of our government, across the board, the pro-China constituencies are very strong, and it is, business oriented, and they create also, apparently they also create a lot of impediments for Indian projects. Either way, whether this is right or wrong, but how do you think that I'm not saying the word long term, because in the long term, we all are dead, as they say. So in the medium term, 5-10 years from now, how are we going to keep the balance there? You referred about the Mataba report, where Japan and Korea are coming in and India joining. So is this a model that should emerge?
In my view, Bangladesh is going to play off both sides, and some projects will be given to China, some will be given to India. As Sheikh Hasina once said, that both are our development partners. And there is a history behind it. China has been giving funds earlier also. It's the question, as I said earlier, where does those funds go, and what is the kind of project? So I think that is the moot point. We, of course, cannot compete with China in terms of money. But then we have a certain relationship with Bangladesh, which is quite different, in terms of people to people. Yes, you are right that the pro-Chinese constituency in Bangladesh has grown, and people are quite gaga, and they get starry-eyed about China's development, etc. The business, the trade with China is far more than with India, and hence those who trade with China are a very strong lobby, and clearly, and hence there are both lobbies there. India's trade is also, there are traders who deal with India. So there are both lobbies at work. The Chinese lobby is monetarily larger in terms of its turnover, 25 billion or something, and we are still around whatever. Now it's about 12 billion. So these are the realities of the economic linkages. And hence this tussle will go on. And the final arbiter will be the Bangladesh government in terms of where do we want India and where do we want China in terms of development projects. We are a major development projects financier of Bangladesh, almost $8-9 billion. So I think those factors will continue to play in the decision making in Bangladesh. And as far as Hasina has always faced this thing about that she's too close to India, etc. But that's the domestic politics. That's the BNP and others who constantly raise this theme. Even now, all the MOUs signed, the BNP has said these are all anti-Bangladesh, not in our national interest. So that's a constant theme. It's like a parroting an old theme, which has lost its relevance, actually.
Thank you, both Professor Datta and Ambassador Chakravarty.
Thank you.